Okay, so 3, 6, just to review, multiplying matrices, okay? Remember, you can only multiply matrices if the middles match up, if they're equal, and then the new dimensions become your outsides. So remember, we read it like matrix A is m by n and n by b, then I can multiply them together. Okay, we looked at those. We looked at when we multiply them together, we multiply a row by a column, add it together for one spot. Row by column, add it together for spot 2, and so on and so forth. We practiced some of them. Okay, then we need to get to this part. This is where we're at. Oops. Okay. Properties of matrix multiplication. Multiplication properties. Okay. So we did the example where we had A, matrix A, it was on the slide before this, matrix A times parentheses B plus C, okay, which equals, you can do it one of 2 ways. You can add BC first and multiply A in, or you can multiply A by B and then add it to A times C, okay. So the properties of matrix multiplication are the same properties that we normally use, except for we're going to use them with matrices. Okay. So the associative property of a matrix multiplication is A times BC is the same thing as A times B and then times C. But look at this. Do you see how the order is still the same here? It goes A, B, C, this goes A, B, C. So I can't flip B and C, and I can't flip A and B. It still has to read the same order, but I can multiply them in any order I choose as long as it's straight, okay? The distributive property, left distributive property, right distributive property, the associative property of scalar multiplication. That K is the scalar thing, like if we have a 2 on the outside or a half on the outside and we multiply it into everything, okay? Okay, cost matrices are something we need to just look over. A cost matrix is a matrix multiplication that's useful in business applications because of inventory. When multiplied by the cost per item, you'll get your total cost. So when you, are you familiar with Excel at all? Excel, you can set up lots of matrix stuff, and a lot of companies will have massive spreadsheets on costs and ratios and profits and different things like that. That's where matrices come into hand a lot. So if you're going into the business profession, or you're going into like an accounting class or business classes that you have to take, you're going to see this again in college. Isabel's dad probably sees some of this a lot during his career, okay? He's going to do a lot of that type of matrix multiplication and setting stuff up that way. So you have to be able to read matrices and know what they're asking. So that takes us to word problem. And then I'm going to give you some word problems for homework tonight. And some review problems, and then we'll just quiz over it tomorrow. Okay? Easy? Okay. So here is our word problem. It says, 2 hockey teams submit equipment list for the season as shown. Okay? Your equipment list. Women's team, men's team. The women's team wants 14 sticks, 30 pucks, 18 uniforms. The men's team wants 16 sticks, 25 pucks, 20 uniforms. Okay? It says each stick costs $60, each puck costs $2, and each uniform costs $35. Use matrix multiplication to find the total cost of equipment for each team. Okay? How can I set up matrix multiplication for that? What can I do? Any ideas?
Would you do the 60 and then the 60 goes to 14, 16, the 2 goes to 30 and 25?
Yes.
And 35
You are, yes, that's correct. So I'm going to multiply 60 by the sticks. I'm going to multiply 2 by the pucks, and I'm going to multiply 35 by the uniforms. Okay? But to make that look like a matrix, that means I need to put this information into a matrix that is 2 rows by 3 columns. Because I'm going to have a row for women and a row for men's. And I have 3 columns because I have 3 different individual things. Does that make sense? So 14, 30, 18, that represents my women, okay? 16, 25, and 20 would represent my men. And I have a 2 by 3, which means if I'm going to multiply it, I have to have what type of matrix do I have to have next?
3 by 2.
A 3 by whatever, but a 3 has to be first, right? Okay, so in this case, it's just going to be a 3 by 1, okay? So I'm going to have 60, I'm going to have 2, and I'm going to have 35. So I have a 3 by 1, which means I'm going to end up getting what size?
2 by 1.
A 2 by
1.
1. 2 by 1. These are the same. So I'm going to end up getting a 2 by 1. Okay? So this is how I would set up a matrix off of information they gave me. You're going to have to be able to recognize that and do that. Okay? So in your head, you need to say to yourself, how can I align this so that the middles will have the same numbers so I can multiply them together? Okay? So if I want to do this, and I'm going to get a 2 by 1, 2 rows, 1 column, right? That's what I'm looking for, 2 rows, 1 column. Okay? I'm going to get, I'm going to come over here into this data and just write over it. This first spot here is going to be this row times this column added together. So 14 times 60.
840.
800 and what? 14.
14. 14.
And then I'm going to add it to 30 times 2. And then I'm going to add it to 18 times 35.
630.
630? Okay.
13.
13, that's what I said, 630. Okay, that gives me that whole row, because I'm looking for the total expense for the women's team, the total expense for the men's team. Now down here, I have to multiply this row by this column. What's 16 times 60?
960.
960. What is 25 times 2 is 50. That's an easy one. 20 times 35.
700.
700, right?
We need to tell
So then my totals, when I add those together, come out to some thousands of dollars, right? What's 890 plus 60 plus 30?
800. That's 840.
Oh, 800. You said 840?
14.
What's 840 plus 60 plus 630? 1530? Oh, that's 1530. What is 960 plus 50 plus 700? 1710. So their sports orders came out to $1,530 and $1,710 for the men's and women's team. So we're going to set up matrices to solve word problems and data information.
So
What,
what's
Mallory? Are you sure you're
I
okay?
thought you said you were going to set up another one,
No.
but we just said it.
Okay. And that is my answer. So the women's cost was $1,530, the men's cost was $1,710. We will not do super large matrices, because if we did, we would need graphing calculators and we could do it that way. We're gonna stick to simpler ones along this line. Nothing bigger than 3 by 3s, okay? That's all we have to do to finish today, so I'm gonna give you some review stuff.
What do you want with this worksheet?
I'll look over it.